Me and my buddy, Mark, decided to escape to the woods for a weekend camping trip. We needed a break from our busy lives in the city. It was supposed to be a fun adventure, just the two of us reconnecting with nature. We set up our tent deep in the heart of the forest, away from any trails or other campers. The night was quiet, with only the soft rustle of leaves and the distant hooting of an owl. We had just finished roasting marshmallows over the campfire, laughing and reminiscing about old times, when we heard a faint rustling outside our tent. Mark and I exchanged glances, thinking it might be a raccoon or a deer. But this wasn't your typical forest noise. The rustling grew louder, more deliberate, and then we heard a voice. It was a low, almost inaudible whisper, like someone muttering just outside the tent. My heart pounded as I strained to make out the words. "Let me in." Mark and I froze, our flashlights poised to reveal the intruder. We asked who it was, but the voice didn't respond. It just kept repeating the same eerie phrase, "Let me in." Mark unzipped the tent slowly, revealing the silhouette of a man standing a few feet away. He was tall and dressed in tattered clothes. His face was hidden in the shadows. "Let me in," he whispered again, his voice tinged with an odd mix of desperation and menace. We were unnerved but decided to help him. Maybe he was lost or in trouble. Mark unzipped the tent further, and the stranger stepped inside. His appearance was unsettling. His clothes were filthy, and his eyes darted around nervously. We asked him if he was okay, but he didn't respond. Instead, he just stood there, staring at us with an unnerving intensity. The atmosphere grew tense, and Mark and I exchanged uneasy glances. Suddenly, the stranger's gaze fixated on me. He leaned in close, his breath hot on my neck. "Let me in," he hissed, and I recoiled in fear. That's when I noticed it, the knife clutched tightly in his hand. It gleamed ominously in the dim light, and I knew we were in grave danger. Mark and I exchanged a look of sheer terror. Without a word, we lunged at the tent flap, pushing our way past the intruder. We sprinted through the woods, not daring to look back, our hearts pounding as we left the campsite behind. As we finally reached our car, the memory of that eerie whisper and the glint of that knife continued to haunt us. We didn't know what the stranger's intentions were, and we had no desire to find out. The camping trip had taken a dark turn, and it was a chilling encounter we would never forget. My buddy, Harris, and I had been camping together since we were kids. Every summer, without fail, we'd venture into the wild, armed with our trusty gear and unwavering friendship. This year, we decided to take our adventures to the next level by exploring a remote location recommended by fellow campers online. The place was a hidden gem, tucked away in the heart of the wilderness. The dense forest surrounded us, creating an impenetrable wall of green. It was serene, tranquil even, as we set up our campsite near a pristine river. The first few nights went by without a hitch. We marveled at the beauty of the untouched wilderness, sharing stories by the campfire as the stars shimmered above. But on the fourth night, things took a chilling turn. We were awoken by a strange noise, a distant, guttural growl that seemed to echo through the trees. We exchanged worried glances, but dismissed it as a wandering animal. However, the growls persisted, growing closer with each passing moment. Curiosity gnawed at us, and we decided to investigate. Armed with flashlights, we ventured into the dark woods, our footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of leaves beneath us. As we moved deeper into the forest, the growls transformed into agonized cries. It was then that we stumbled upon a gruesome scene. 3 shadowy figures surrounded a helpless individual, their intentions clear from their savage actions. Horror gripped us as we watched in shock. They seemed intent on inflicting pain and suffering. It was a sight we couldn't ignore, and we made the impulsive decision to intervene. Our flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing our presence to the attackers. The moment they saw us, their twisted faces contorted into sinister grins. It was a look that sent shivers down my spine. Without a word, they abandoned their victim and advanced toward us. Panic set in as we realized the dire predicament we had put ourselves in. We turned to run, but it was too late. The assailants chased us through the tangled underbrush, their footsteps echoing in the night. Branches scraped against our skin, and our breaths came in ragged gasps as we fought to escape the relentless pursuit. With every step, their malevolent laughter grew louder, and it was clear they took sadistic pleasure in the chase. We stumbled and fell, and I could hear Harris's frantic whispers, urging us to keep moving. We burst out of the woods, back into the clearing of our campsite, but we were not alone. The attackers were closing in, their eyes glinting with a madness that sent chills down my spine. In a desperate bid for survival, we reached our tent and fumbled for our camping gear. Adrenaline coursed through our veins as we brandished our tools. The attackers hesitated, wary of our makeshift weapons. It was a standoff in the dead of night, a battle of wills between seasoned campers and these sinister strangers. We didn't know who they were or what drove them to such brutality, but we were determined to defend ourselves. The tension hung in the air like a storm about to break, and as the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, the attackers finally retreated into the woods, disappearing like shadows into the depths of the wilderness. Exhausted and shaken, we watched them go, vowing never to return to this godforsaken place. Our love for camping had brought us to the edge of a nightmare, and we knew we had narrowly escaped a fate too terrifying to contemplate. As we packed up our gear and left that cursed wilderness behind, we couldn't help but wonder what dark secrets lay hidden beneath its tranquil facade. It was a summer trip we would never forget. Life had been a relentless whirlwind for me and my girlfriend, Emma. My days were consumed by the endless demands of being an IT consultant, while Emma toiled away in a bustling bakery. We were weary, seeking respite from the daily grind that left us drained. One fateful weekend, as we strolled through a discount store, we spotted a cheap tent on display. The idea of escaping our mundane lives for a while, trading our screens for starry skies, seemed irresistible. Without hesitation, we grabbed the tent and decided that a camping trip was the perfect escape. We scoured the internet for a secluded getaway, a place far removed from the bustling city. After hours of searching, we found a promising destination, a tranquil lake nestled in the heart of the wilderness, just a 2-hour drive away. The pictures online depicted a serene oasis, the perfect antidote to our stress. Excitement bubbled within us as we packed our meager camping gear and set off early Saturday morning. The drive was uneventful, the road leading us deeper into the wilderness. As we left behind the familiar cityscape, anticipation grew like a beacon in our hearts. Upon arriving, we were greeted by the stillness of the lake, its waters reflecting the serene forest that surrounded it. Our tent stood alone at the water's edge, the embodiment of solitude. It was paradise. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we kindled a campfire and sat by its warm glow, toasting marshmallows and sharing stories. The stars above shone brilliantly, reminding us of the world beyond our hectic lives. But as the night wore on, our idyllic retreat began to transform. Strange sounds emerged from the darkness, whispers in the wind, distant rustlings in the underbrush. Emma clutched my arm, her eyes white with unease. We dismissed our fears as products of an overactive imagination, attributing the noises to the normal nocturnal activities of wildlife. But then, a rhythmic, eerie chanting emerged from the forest, growing louder with each passing minute. Curiosity and concern compelled us to investigate. Armed with flashlights, we ventured into the woods, guided by the echoing chants. The path grew increasingly tangled and obscure. As we followed the sound, we stumbled upon a chilling sight, a gathering of hooded figures surrounding a dark, ancient-looking altar. They chanted in an unfamiliar language, their voices resonating with an otherworldly power. Fear welled within us as we realized the gravity of the situation. These were not ordinary campers, they were part of something far more sinister. They had chosen this secluded lake for a purpose, and we had unwittingly intruded upon their ritual. Terrified and trembling, we tried to retreat quietly, but it was too late. A twig snapped beneath our feet, and the hooded figures turned toward us in unison. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light as they advanced with a slow, deliberate purpose. Emma and I fled in blind terror, racing back to our campsite. The hooded figures pursued us relentlessly, their presence an ever-encroaching nightmare. We managed to reach our tent, but the nightmarish chanting echoed in our ears. With our hearts pounding and breaths ragged, we packed up in haste, abandoning our idyllic retreat. The drive back to the city was a blur, the weight of the unsettling encounter heavy on our minds. The camping trip we had yearned for turned out to be a descent into the unknown, a haunting experience that shattered the tranquility we had sought. It was a harsh reminder that sometimes the solitude of nature can conceal secrets more sinister than the urban chaos we sought to escape. It had been a long-awaited camping trip with 5 of my closest friends. We had ventured deep into the woods, seeking an escape from the daily grind and the cacophony of the city. It was supposed to be a weekend of camaraderie and adventure, but it turned into a nightmarish ordeal. The first sign of trouble came as night fell, and we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter. The crackling flames were our only source of light, casting eerie shadows among the towering trees. That's when we heard a faint rustling in the underbrush. We exchanged puzzled glances, attributing it to the usual sounds of the forest. But the rustling persisted, growing closer and more deliberate. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to investigate. Armed with flashlights, we ventured into the dark woods, our beams cutting through the oppressive blackness. We combed the area, searching for the source of the noises, but found nothing. The forest seemed utterly still, as if it had swallowed the sounds. Convinced it was nothing more than our imagination playing tricks on us, we returned to the campfire, eager to shake off the unease. We joked about wild animals and ghost stories, trying to convince ourselves that we were in control. However, as the night wore on and we retreated to our tents, the noises returned. They were different this time, an eerie chorus of whispers that seemed to surround us. We huddled together, straining to decipher the unintelligible words. Fear crept into our hearts as we realized that the sounds were not natural. They were deliberate and chillingly close. Panic set in as we tried to rationalize the situation. Was it just a prank, or was something more sinister at play? With trembling hands, we decided that we couldn't endure another minute in the woods. We grabbed our flashlights and began packing our gear, working in near darkness as the moon hid behind thick clouds. The unease in the air grew with every rustling leaf and snapping twig. Finally, our tents dismantled and gear hastily stowed, we made our way back to the car. But our troubles were far from over. The headlights pierced the darkness, revealing that all 4 tires had been slashed. It was a nightmare come to life. Panic and frustration gripped us as we realized we were stranded in the wilderness, miles away from help. The eerie whispers still lingered in the night, growing louder and more ominous. We had no choice but to abandon the car and continue on foot, guided only by the dim beams of our flashlights. The forest seemed to close in around us as we walked, the oppressive darkness and haunting sounds sapping our resolve. Fear gnawed at our sanity, and every rustle of leaves became a sinister threat. Hours passed, and exhaustion took its toll as we trudged through the wilderness. We had no idea where we were headed, only that we needed to escape the horrors of that night. It was a relentless struggle against the unknown, our fear driving us forward. As dawn finally broke, we stumbled upon a ranger station. Our cries for help met with both relief and disbelief. The ordeal had left us shaken, our belief in the tranquility of nature shattered. I had always been drawn to the wilderness, but nothing could have prepared me for the terror that awaited me on a camping trip with my friends Sarah, Mike, and Alex. We were seasoned campers, well versed in the art of survival, or so we thought. Our destination was a secluded lake nestled deep in the heart of a dense forest, a place whispered about by locals, a place most deemed too eerie to visit. But we craved adventure and relished the idea of a remote escape, far from the chaos of everyday life. The drive to the lake was uneventful, the winding roads leading us further away from civilization. As we set up camp near the silent waters, an eerie calm enveloped us. The lake mirrored the inky blackness of the surrounding trees, a dark abyss that seemed to swallow all sound. The first night passed without incident, but the following day brought an oppressive stillness that clung to the air like a shroud. Unease settled over us as we fished and explored the woods, the deafening silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. As darkness fell, the silence turned into an unsettling void. It was as though the world held its breath, waiting for something. We gathered around the campfire, casting wary glances at the impenetrable darkness beyond. Then it began, a soft, haunting melody, like a mournful lullaby carried on the wind. We strained to identify the source, our flashlights illuminating the trees, but found nothing. The music seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. We retreated to our tents, but the haunting melody continued, weaving through the fabric, creeping into our minds. It was a tune that tugged at our very souls, instilling a deep, primal fear. Sleep eluded us, and we lay in our tents, paralyzed by the eerie song. As the night deepened, we heard whispers, hushed voices that seemed to dance just beyond our comprehension. Dread settled over us as the whispers grew louder, more sinister. We decided to investigate, our flashlights cutting through the oppressive darkness. The voices led us to the lake's edge, where a rowboat lay tethered to a decaying dock. In the boat, we found a weathered journal filled with cryptic symbols and ramblings of a man who had lost his mind. The whispers now seemed to emanate from the lake itself, as if it held secrets too dreadful to comprehend. Sarah reached out to touch the water, but her fingers recoiled from the icy chill. As we turned to leave, the lake's surface trembled, and shadowy figures began to emerge. Distorted, elongated forms rising from the depths. Panic seized us as we realized we were in the presence of something ancient, something malevolent. We sprinted back to our camp, our hearts pounding with terror. The haunting melody followed us, growing louder and more dissonant. The shadows from the lake pursued us, coalescing into a nightmarish entity that seemed to reach out for us. With every step, the forest closed in, the trees twisting and contorting, blocking our escape. We were trapped in a waking nightmare, a surreal realm of darkness and despair. Morning eventually broke, and we found ourselves at the edge of the lake once more. The shadows had vanished, leaving only the still waters behind. It was as though the horrors of the night had never occurred. We packed up our camp, our faces etched with the terror of our ordeal. We had encountered an ancient evil, a presence that lurked beneath the serene surface of the lake. Our camping group consisted of 4 close friends, Dave, Lisa, Matt, and me. We had a tradition of exploring remote and lesser-known camping spots, but this time our sense of adventure would lead us into the depths of fear. We stumbled upon a peculiar recommendation online, a secluded campsite deep within a sprawling forest known as Whispering Pines. The sparse reviews hinted at an eerie ambience, but we took it as a chance for a unique experience. Upon arrival, the forest lived up to its name. A soft breeze rustled through the tall pines, producing a symphony of whispers. We set up camp by a tranquil brook, the sound of running water promising a peaceful night. The first day passed uneventfully. We hiked along winding trails, admiring the untouched beauty of the forest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, regaling each other with stories and laughter. The forest seemed to echo our merriment. However, that night, the forest's true character revealed itself. As we lay in our tents, the whispers intensified. It wasn't the wind, it was an unsettling murmur of voices, indistinct, eerie, and filled with a sense of dread. Dave, always the adventurous one, suggested that we investigate the source of the whispers. Armed with flashlights, we ventured into the darkness, our beams piercing the inky blackness. The forest seemed alive with unnatural movement, the shadows playing tricks on our senses. But despite our thorough search, we found no one and nothing to explain the disconcerting whispers. We chalked it up to imagination running wild and returned to our tents. Just as we began to drift into uneasy sleep, a strange sensation gripped us, a feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes fixed upon us. We dismissed it as paranoia, but the sensation lingered. Hours later, Lisa woke us with a terrified scream. She claimed that she had seen someone or something just beyond her tent, a shadowy figure with gleaming eyes. Panic surged through the group as we searched the area, but there was no evidence of an intruder. Fear gnawed at us as we returned to our tents, and it wasn't long before the whispers resumed. This time, they were closer, more sinister. They seemed to emanate from the very trees around us, an eerie chorus of voices that grew louder and more distinct. Matt and I couldn't take it any longer. We decided to leave the forest in the dead of night, using our flashlights to guide our way. The whispers followed us, taunting us with their cryptic messages. But when we reached the clearing where we had parked our car, a chilling sight awaited us. All 4 tires had been slashed, rendering our escape impossible. Panic set in as we realized we were stranded in whispering pines, at the mercy of an unseen and malevolent presence. The night seemed endless as we huddled in our tents, the whispers growing louder and more menacing. We felt surrounded, trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. With the first light of dawn, the whispers subsided, and the forest fell silent once more. We packed our gear, casting wary glances at the shadows. As we left the cursed whispering pines behind, we couldn't help but wonder what unseen and ancient force had tormented us. My camping adventure was supposed to be a tranquil escape into the heart of nature. Little did I know that the wilderness would unravel a mystery that still haunts my dreams. I ventured into the woods alone, craving solitude and the chance to disconnect from the world. I set up my camp near a serene lake, surrounded by towering trees that seemed to whisper ancient secrets. The first night was peaceful, the only sounds being the chirping of crickets and the distant call of a lone owl. I marveled at the starry sky and the tranquility of the wilderness. But on the second night, things took an eerie turn. As I lay in my tent, I heard a soft, rhythmic tapping on the trees. At first, I dismissed it as the wind, but it grew louder and more deliberate, like someone tapping out a message in Morse code. Curiosity drove me to investigate. Armed with my flashlight, I ventured into the woods, following the eerie tapping sound. It led me deeper into the forest, where I stumbled upon a grove of ancient trees. The tapping seemed to emanate from a specific tree, its bark etched with strange symbols. My heart raced as I tried to decipher the cryptic message. It was a series of dots and dashes, a message in Morse code that read, "Leave now." Chills ran down my spine as I realized that someone had left this message for me. I had no idea who could have known I was here, let alone why they wanted me to leave. I retreated to my campsite, my mind racing with questions. Who had left a message? Why did they want me gone? The forest had become an unsettling enigma, and I felt like an unwelcome guest. As the night wore on, the tapping continued, growing louder and more urgent. It was as though the very trees were trying to drive me away. Fear took hold, and I decided to pack up and leave, my sense of adventure overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of dread. I stumbled through the dark woods, my flashlight cutting through the inky blackness. But the forest seemed to close in around me, the trees twisting and contorting, blocking my path. Panic set in as I realized I was lost, disoriented by the relentless tapping and the shifting landscape. I wandered for what felt like hours, my fear mounting with each passing minute. Finally, at the break of dawn, I stumbled upon a trail that led me back to civilization. I left the forest behind, shaken and bewildered by the inexplicable events that had transpired. To this day, I have no answers to the mystery of the tapping trees or the cryptic message. It remains an unsettling enigma. Our camping trip was meant to be a bonding experience for our group of friends. We were all avid outdoor enthusiasts, seeking adventure away from the hustle and bustle of city life. However, the trip took a chilling turn that left us questioning the very nature of reality. There was Sarah, Chris, Emily, and me. We arrived at a remote campsite nestled deep within a dense forest, eager to embrace the tranquility of the wilderness. The campsite was idyllic, a clearing beside a babbling brook with a view of towering trees. The first day passed without incident. We hiked along scenic trails, sharing stories and laughter by the campfire as night fell. The stars above shone brilliantly, promising a peaceful night's sleep. But as we settled into our tents, a strange sensation washed over us, a feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes observing our every move. We brushed it off as mere paranoia and drifted into uneasy sleep. In the dead of night, we were awoken by Emily's panicked screams. We rushed to her tent to find her trembling and incoherent. She claimed that Chris had vanished right before our eyes. We searched the campsite, but Chris was nowhere to be found. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. Panic gripped us as we combed the forest, calling out his name, but there was no response. Then, Sarah suddenly vanished, just like Chris. One moment she was there, and the next, she was gone. Emily and I were left in a state of shock and disbelief, unable to comprehend the inexplicable. We decided to pack up and leave, our fear overwhelming our desire to stay. But as we frantically gathered our gear, Emily was plucked from the campsite by an unseen force, her cries echoing through the forest. I was now utterly alone, paralyzed by terror. I fled the campsite, sprinting through the woods with no sense of direction. The forest seemed to warp and shift around me, as if it were alive, and I was its prey. As dawn broke, I stumbled upon a ranger station, my voice trembling as I recounted the night's horrors. They launched a search for my friends, but no trace of them was ever found. I left the forest with a heavy heart and a haunting question: what had happened that night? The wilderness had swallowed my friends whole, leaving me as the lone survivor of a nightmarish ordeal. We were a group of friends, seeking a break from our routine lives, and decided on a camping trip to a secluded forest. The dense woods promised an escape from the chaos of the city, but little did we know that this escape would lead to a chilling encounter. Our campsite was nestled deep within the forest, and we set up our tents by a serene river. The first day was filled with laughter and exploration. We reveled in the beauty of nature, sharing stories by the campfire under a starry sky. But as the night grew darker and uneasiness settled over the group, we began to hear strange noises, rustling leaves, distant footsteps, and whispers that seemed to echo through the woods. Fear replaced our initial excitement. Curiosity drove us to investigate, and we ventured into the forest, armed only with flashlights. As we moved deeper, the noises grew louder and more ominous. We were not alone. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man with a gun in his hand. His face was hidden beneath a mask, his intentions unclear. Fear paralyzed us as we stared at the menacing intruder. Without a word, the man raised his gun, and panic surged through our group. We turned and fled, crashing through the underbrush, desperate to escape the armed stranger. As we ran, we heard the crack of a gunshot, and a bullet whizzed past, narrowly missing one of us. The realization that our lives were in danger pushed us to our limits, and we pushed deeper into the woods, hoping to lose our pursuer. Hours passed as we evaded our unknown assailant, the forest growing denser and more disorienting. Fear and exhaustion drove us to the brink, and we were on the verge of collapse. Finally, at the break of dawn, we stumbled upon a ranger station. We recounted the terrifying encounter to the rangers, who launched a search for the armed man. But he was never found. We left the forest, forever haunted by the chilling encounter. The wilderness, once a symbol of serenity, had become a place of unsolved mysteries and lurking dangers. I'll never forget that fateful camping trip with my friends, Jaden, Harry, and Marco. What was supposed to be a fun adventure into the wilderness turned into a nightmare that still haunts my dreams. We had ventured deep into the woods, seeking a break from our ordinary lives. The forest was dense and foreboding, but we were confident, fueled by our youthful bravado. Setting up our camp, we were oblivious to the creeping darkness that enveloped the forest. The first night was uneventful, filled with campfire stories and laughter, the eerie sounds of the wilderness serving as our background music. But on the second night, things took a chilling turn. As we lay in our tents, we heard a soft, rhythmic tapping on the trees. At first, we dismissed it as the wind, but it grew louder and more deliberate, like someone tapping out a message in Morse code. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to investigate. Armed with flashlights, we ventured into the dark woods, our beams cutting through the oppressive blackness. We combed the area, searching for the source of the noises, but found nothing. The forest seemed utterly still, as if it had swallowed the sounds. Convinced it was nothing more than our imagination playing tricks on us, we returned to the campfire, eager to shake off the unease. We joked about wild animals and ghost stories, trying to convince ourselves that we were in control. However, as the night wore on and we retreated to our tents, the tapping returned. This time, it was different, a haunting melody, like a mournful lullaby carried on the wind. We strained to identify the source, our flashlights illuminating the trees, but found nothing. The music seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. We retreated to our tents once more, but the haunting melody continued, weaving through the fabric, creeping into our minds. It was a tune that tugged at our very souls, instilling a deep, primal fear. Sleep eluded us, and we lay in our tents, paralyzed by the eerie song. As the night deepened, we heard whispers, hushed voices that seemed to dance just beyond our comprehension. Dread settled over us as we tried to rationalize the situation. Was it just a prank, or was something more sinister at play? With trembling hands, we decided that we couldn't endure another minute in the woods. We grabbed our flashlights and began packing our gear, working in near darkness as the moon hid behind thick clouds. The unease in the air grew with every rustling leaf and snapping twig. Finally, our tents dismantled and gear hastily stowed, we made our way back to the car. But our troubles were far from over. The headlights pierced the darkness, revealing that all 4 tires had been slashed. It was a nightmare come to life. Panic and frustration gripped us as we realized we were stranded in the wilderness, miles away from help. The eerie whispers still lingered in the night, growing louder and more ominous. We had no choice but to abandon the car and continue on foot, guided only by the dim beams of our flashlights. The forest seemed to close in around us as we walked, the oppressive darkness and haunting sounds sapping our resolve. Fear gnawed at our sanity, and every rustle of leaves became a sinister threat. Hours passed, and exhaustion took its toll as we trudged through the wilderness. We had no idea where we were headed, only that we needed to escape the horrors of that night. It was a relentless struggle against the unknown, our fear driving us forward. As dawn finally broke, we stumbled upon a ranger station, our cries for help met with both relief and disbelief. The ordeal had left us shaken, our belief in the tranquility of nature shattered. The camping trip we had eagerly anticipated had become a nightmarish journey into the unknown, a terrifying ordeal that had tested the limits of our courage and endurance. My friends, Stu, Gabby, and I were adventurous souls who lived for the thrill of the unknown. Our latest escapade was a camping trip to a remote forest rumored to be a place of ancient legends and eerie happenings. Little did we know that our thirst for adventure would lead us into the heart of an unsettling mystery. Our campsite was nestled beside an ancient burial ground deep within the forest, a place of long-forgotten stories and lingering spirits. The eerie silence that enveloped us was broken only by the distant hooting of owls. The first day passed without incident. We explored the dense woods, captivated by the lush greenery and the sense of isolation from the outside world. As night fell, we gathered around the campfire, sharing ghost stories and laughter, the flames casting flickering shadows that seemed to dance to the rhythm of our words. But as the night grew darker, the atmosphere shifted. Strange whispers began to fill the air, carrying tales of forgotten souls and restless spirits. We dismissed them as the products of our overactive imaginations and settled into our tents. That's when the real horror began. From the depths of the forest, we heard a haunting echo, an otherworldly chant that sent shivers down our spines. The words were indistinct, but the message was clear. Something ancient and malevolent was lurking in the darkness. We huddled together in fear, our flashlights casting shaky beams of light into the impenetrable blackness beyond our tents. As the chant grew louder, we realized it was coming closer, as if drawing us into its sinister embrace. Driven by a mixture of curiosity and terror, we ventured out to investigate. The forest seemed to come alive, the trees swaying to the eerie rhythm of the chant. Our flashlights illuminated twisted branches and gnarled roots that seemed to reach out for us. But we found no source for the haunting melody, no explanation for the unnatural phenomenon. It was as though the very forest itself had become a living, breathing entity, intent on ensnaring us in its web of terror. As we retreated to our tents, the chanting continued, each verse growing more sinister and chilling. Sleep was impossible, the oppressive presence of the forest seeping into our souls. When dawn finally broke, we packed up our camp, eager to leave the cursed place behind. But the forest wasn't finished with us. As we made our way back to civilization, the haunting chant followed us, growing louder and more haunting with every step. The echoes of that night continue to haunt me, a reminder that some places in the wilderness hold secrets too dark to fathom. The forest had become a living nightmare, a realm of ancient terrors and unspeakable horrors. It was a chilling testament to the fact that not all adventures in the wild are meant to be undertaken, and some mysteries are better left unsolved. I had always been an avid camper, and my best friend, Shay, shared my passion for the outdoors. We often embarked on camping trips together, seeking adventure and solitude away from the hustle and bustle of the city. But one particular trip would forever alter our perception of the wilderness. Our destination was a secluded spot deep within the woods, a place we had heard about from fellow campers, a hidden gem far from the beaten path. As we set up our camp, the serenity of the wilderness surrounded us, and the promise of a peaceful night filled the air. The first day was everything we had hoped for. We explored the picturesque trails, discovered hidden waterfalls, and reveled in the beauty of nature. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter. The night began peacefully. The crackling fire provided warmth and comfort, and the stars above shone brilliantly. But as the hours passed and the forest grew still, an eerie sense of unease settled over us. It started with a soft rustling in the underbrush, something barely audible. We dismissed it as the wind playing tricks, but the sound grew more distinct, like the footsteps of an unseen visitor. Shay and I exchanged uneasy glances. Then came the voice, a voice we recognized, but one that should have been impossible to hear. It was my own voice, calling out from the darkness beyond the fire's glow. We both froze, our hearts pounding. "Come on, guys, let's play," the voice beckoned. The words sent shivers down our spines. We had been alone in the forest, and there was no way anyone could have been there with us. But the voice was undeniably mine, and it was coming closer. Shay and I grabbed our flashlights and ventured into the darkness, determined to uncover the source of the voice. The forest seemed to close in around us, the shadows playing tricks on our senses. As we moved deeper into the woods, the voice grew louder and more insistent. It called out to us, mimicking our own words and laughter. Panic surged through us, and we knew we had to find answers. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the voice ceased. We found ourselves in an unfamiliar part of the forest, disoriented and terrified. We shone our flashlights around, searching for any sign of our unseen visitor. That's when we saw it, a shadowy figure standing among the trees, its form indistinct but undeniably human. It was facing away from us, and we couldn't make out any features, but its presence sent terror coursing through our veins. Before we could react, the figure turned and vanished into the night, leaving us alone in the dark woods. We stumbled back to our campsite, packed up our gear, and fled the forest, haunted by the inexplicable encounter. To this day, Shay and I have no explanation for what happened that night. The voice, the shadowy figure, it defied rationality and left us with a chilling sense of unease. The wilderness, once a place of solace and adventure, had become a realm of unexplainable horrors. It was a stark reminder that in the wild, the line between reality and the unknown can blur into darkness when you least expect it. The decision to camp in the long-abandoned town was a mix of youthful curiosity and a quest for adventure. My friends Tilly, James, Samuel, and I were captivated by the allure of a place frozen in time, its crumbling buildings and forgotten history begging to be explored. Little did we know that our fascination would lead us into a nightmarish confrontation with the town's unseen inhabitants. As we set up our tents on the outskirts of the town, the eerie atmosphere was undeniable. Moonlight cast long shadows on the dilapidated structures, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creaking of old timbers. The first day was spent wandering through the town's abandoned streets. We explored decaying houses, peered into forgotten storefronts, and marveled at the relics of a bygone era. The history of this place seemed to whisper from the walls, and we were spellbound by its secrets. As night descended, we gathered around a campfire, sharing stories and laughter. But the allure of the town's mysteries couldn't be ignored, and with flashlights in hand, we ventured into the darkened streets. We entered one particularly decrepit building, its sagging roof and peeling wallpaper a testament to its age. Samuel's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and our laughter turned nervous. Then, we heard it, a faint whisper from the shadows. We froze, our flashlight sweeping the room, searching for the source. The whispering grew louder, forming into indistinct words. "It's just the wind," James muttered, trying to mask his unease. But the words were too deliberate, too unsettling to be dismissed so easily. We moved deeper into the building, drawn by the haunting whispers. In a dimly lit room, we made a chilling discovery, a makeshift bedroom, complete with blankets and personal belongings. Someone had been living here. Fear gripped us as we realized that we were not alone. The realization was punctuated by a low, guttural growl that emanated from the darkness. We turned our flashlights to the doorway and saw them, figures shrouded in tattered clothing, their eyes filled with a sinister gleam. Tilly screamed, and we backed away in terror. The figures advanced, their movements slow and deliberate, as if savoring our fear. We fled the building, our hearts pounding, and ran into the desolate streets. The town, once a place of curiosity and adventure, had become a nightmarish labyrinth. The figures pursued us relentlessly, their eerie whispers growing louder and more malevolent. We reached our campsite, hastily tearing down our tents, our hands shaking with fear. As we fled into the surrounding woods, we could still hear the whispers, the unseen inhabitants of the town haunting our every step. The encounter had shattered our fascination and left us with a chilling realization. The abandoned town was not devoid of life. It was a place where the past and present merged into a nightmarish reckoning. It was a wake-up call that some mysteries are better left untouched. The decision to embark on a camping trip with my boyfriend, Eddie, was meant to be a romantic escape from our busy lives. We were both seeking solace in the embrace of nature, a chance to reconnect beneath the starry skies. Little did we know that our journey into the wilderness would lead to a night of chilling encounters. Our chosen campsite was nestled deep within a dense forest, miles away from civilization. As we set up our tent, the rustling leaves and the soothing sounds of a nearby stream welcomed us to the serene wilderness. The promise of a peaceful night filled the air. The first day was perfect. We explored the lush trails, shared whispered secrets by the campfire, and watched the sun dip below the horizon, casting a warm glow on the world. The night beckoned with the promise of romance. But as darkness enveloped us, the atmosphere shifted. The forest that had been so inviting now felt ominous. We snuggled in our tent, listening to the distant hoots of owls and the unsettling howls of coyotes. Suddenly, the forest grew silent. Eddie and I exchanged worried glances. The feeling of being watched weighed heavily upon us. We brushed it off as imagination and closed our eyes, hoping to drift into a peaceful slumber. That's when we heard it, a soft, haunting melody carried on the wind. It was a tune we couldn't quite place, a mournful song that seemed to echo through the trees. It was a melody that tugged at the deepest corners of our souls. Unable to ignore it, we unzipped the tent and ventured outside, our flashlights cutting through the inky blackness. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for our next move. We followed the haunting melody, our hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The tune grew louder and more melancholic, leading us deeper into the woods. Then, in a small clearing, we saw her, a spectral figure bathed in an eerie, ethereal light. She was a woman in a flowing gown, her face hidden beneath a veil of shadows. Her fingers danced over the strings of an otherworldly instrument, producing the haunting melody that had drawn us in. Eddie and I watched in awe as the woman continued to play, the music wrapping around us like a vice. But the enchantment was short-lived. The figure turned toward us, her face hidden in darkness, and let out a bone-chilling wail that echoed through the forest. Fear seized us, and we turned and fled, crashing through the underbrush, desperate to escape the malevolent presence. The haunting melody followed us, a relentless pursuit that seemed to come from all directions. Hours later, we stumbled upon a ranger station, our cries for help met with both relief and disbelief. We recounted the surreal encounter with the mysterious woman, but the ranger could offer no explanation. As we left the forest, the haunting melody still lingered in our ears, a chilling reminder of the eerie encounter that had marred our romantic getaway. As a lover of solitude and the great outdoors, I often found solace in camping alone. My latest expedition took me to a remote, untouched wilderness, and untamed paradise where I hoped to disconnect from the noise of civilization. Little did I know that my journey into the wild would lead me to a night of unsettling discoveries. My chosen campsite was nestled beside a pristine river, its gentle murmur a soothing lullaby. The surrounding forest was untouched, its thick canopy casting dappled shadows that danced to the rhythm of the wind. The first day was a journey of exploration. I hiked along unmarked trails, marveled at the untamed beauty of the landscape, and lost myself in the simplicity of nature. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I lit a campfire and watched the stars emerge, feeling truly alive. The night began peacefully. The crackling fire provided warmth, and the night sky was an ocean of stars. But as the hours passed, a strange sensation settled over me, an inexplicable feeling of being watched. I brushed it off as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once welcoming, now felt like a realm of unseen eyes and hidden secrets. Then, I heard it, a soft, almost inaudible whisper that seemed to come from all directions. It was as if the very forest itself was speaking. The words were indistinct, but the tone was unsettling, as if the forest held a message meant only for me. Driven by curiosity and unease, I ventured into the woods with my flashlight, the beam cutting through the inky darkness. The whispering grew louder, and the words became more pronounced, but they were in a language I couldn't comprehend. I followed the eerie whispers, the forest growing denser around me. The air seemed charged with an otherworldly energy, and the shadows danced with a life of their own. In a small clearing, I found a circle of stones, a makeshift altar, adorned with symbols I couldn't decipher. The whispers reached a crescendo, and I felt a presence, as if something ancient and malevolent was stirring. Suddenly, the forest came alive with movement, shadows that seemed to slither and writhe, encircling me. Panic gripped me as I realized I was not alone. The shadows converged, forming a towering figure, a spectral entity shrouded in darkness. It reached out a shadowy hand, and I stumbled backward in terror. Without warning, the figure dissipated, vanishing into the night. The eerie whispers ceased, and the forest fell silent once more. Shaken to my core, I returned to my campsite, packed my gear, and fled the wilderness. The encounter had shattered my love for solitude and left me with a haunting sense of the unknown. Camping trips with my friend Gareth were always an adventure. We were explorers at heart, eager to uncover hidden gems in the wilderness. But one particular camping trip would lead us to an unsettling discovery that would forever haunt our memories. Our chosen campsite was nestled beside a serene lake, its waters reflecting the azure sky. The surrounding forest exuded an air of tranquility, and the promise of a peaceful night under the stars beckoned us. The first day was filled with exploration. We hiked along the picturesque trails, took in the breathtaking views, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing warmth and comfort. But as the hours passed, the atmosphere grew heavy. The forest, once inviting, now felt oppressive. A sense of unease settled over us, as if we were being watched. A restless feeling overcame us, and we decided to take a moonlit stroll along the lake. Our flashlights pierced the darkness, revealing the tranquil waters and the towering trees that lined the shore. That's when we stumbled upon an abandoned car, partially hidden by the underbrush. It was a rusted relic from a bygone era, its windows long shattered. We exchanged curious glances and approached the vehicle. The interior was shrouded in darkness, but as our flashlights swept over the front seats, we made a horrifying discovery: a lifeless body slumped behind the wheel. The man's eyes stared lifelessly into the night, and a chill settled over us. Fear and shock gripped us as we realized the gravity of the situation. We quickly backed away from the car, our hearts pounding. We knew we had to contact the authorities, but the remoteness of our location weighed on us. We returned to our campsite, packed up our gear, and made the treacherous journey back to civilization, our minds haunted by the disturbing sight. As we reported the discovery to the authorities, we couldn't help but wonder about the circumstances surrounding the abandoned car and the life it had claimed. The encounter had shattered the tranquility of our camping trip, leaving us with a chilling reminder that the wilderness held secrets too dark to fathom. It was a stark testament to the fact that sometimes the beauty of nature could hide the most unsettling mysteries, and that even in the remotest of places, the specter of the unknown could lurk just out of sight. My wife, Lucy, and I were always drawn to the rugged beauty of the mountains. Our camping trips served as a way to escape the chaos of city life and reconnect with the serenity of the wilderness. But one particular excursion would lead us to a chilling encounter that would forever haunt our memories. Our chosen campsite was nestled at the base of a majestic mountain range, their peaks reaching skyward like ancient sentinels. The pristine landscape surrounded us, and the promise of a tranquil night beneath the starlit heavens beckoned us. The first day was filled with exploration. We hiked along the scenic trails, gazing in awe at the towering mountains and the lush valleys below. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter, the flames casting a warm glow on our faces. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing both light and comfort. The mountain air was crisp and cool, and the stars overhead shone brightly. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over us, a sensation that we were not alone. Lucy and I exchanged nervous glances, and the forest, once inviting, now felt eerily silent. It was then that we heard it, a distant sound, like the soft crunch of leaves underfoot. We strained to listen, and the footsteps drew nearer. Suddenly, a man emerged from the tree-line, his silhouette illuminated by the campfire's flickering light. His appearance was disheveled, his clothes tattered and stained. He seemed to be in his 40s, with wild eyes that darted about as if searching for something. "Help me," he rasped, his voice trembling with fear. Fearful but compassionate, we approached the stranger cautiously. He spoke of being lost in the wilderness for days, surviving on little more than desperation. His tale was a harrowing one, of disorientation and encounters with unknown terrors in the mountains. As Lucy and I listened, a chill crept over us. We offered him food, water, and shelter, but his presence remained unsettling. He spoke of strange voices echoing through the mountains, whispers that seemed to carry on the wind. Unable to ignore his pleas for help, we allowed him to stay the night. But as darkness settled over our camp, the atmosphere grew heavy with unease. The man's behavior became erratic, and his words became increasingly incomprehensible. Then, in the dead of night, we awoke to a blood-curdling scream. We rushed outside to find the man gone, leaving behind only a cryptic message scrawled in the dirt. Camping with my young son had always been a cherished tradition, a way to teach him about the wonders of the great outdoors. Our latest adventure took us deep into a dense, ancient forest, a place where the whispers of nature seemed to beckon. But little did we know that our journey into the wilderness would lead to a chilling encounter with a park ranger whose intentions were anything but benevolent. Our campsite was nestled beside a tranquil river, its waters glistening under the dappled sunlight. The towering trees cast a protective canopy over us, and the promise of a peaceful night under the stars filled the air. The first day was a journey of exploration. My son and I hiked along the picturesque trails, identified wildflowers, and marveled at the forest's hidden treasures. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing warmth and comfort. My son's excitement for the adventure was infectious, and the forest seemed to come alive with his enthusiasm. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over me, a sense of being observed. I brushed it off as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt oppressive. It was then that we heard it, the sound of approaching footsteps. I peered into the darkness and saw the figure of a park ranger emerging from the shadows. His uniform was weathered and disheveled, and his face bore a twisted grin that sent shivers down my spine. "Evening, folks," he greeted us, his voice carrying a sinister undertone. We exchanged uneasy pleasantries, but the ranger's presence was unsettling. He spoke of park regulations and curfews, insisting that we pack up our camp and leave immediately. Reluctant to disrupt our adventure, I requested an explanation. That's when the ranger's demeanor shifted, his grin turning menacing. He spoke of the forest's dark secrets, of strange happenings that occurred after nightfall, and of a need to protect visitors from the unknown. As my son and I exchanged worried glances, the ranger's sinister intentions became clear. He was determined to drive us out of the forest, and his words took on a veiled threat. Unable to ignore the danger, I decided to comply, hastily packing our gear as the ranger watched with unsettling satisfaction. With our camp disassembled, we began to leave, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest held secrets far more sinister than the ranger had revealed. Camping with my sister had always been a source of bonding and shared memories. Our latest excursion took us to a remote, untouched forest, a place where the whispers of nature seemed to beckon. But little did we know that our journey into the wilderness would lead us to a night of unsettling discoveries that would unravel forgotten tales. Our campsite was nestled beside a pristine lake, its mirrored surface reflecting the towering trees that surrounded it. The lush forest exuded an air of serenity, and the promise of a peaceful night beneath the stars filled the air. The first day was filled with exploration. My sister and I hiked along the winding trails, encountered wildlife, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter, the flames casting flickering shadows that danced in the night. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing warmth and comfort. My sister and I reminisced about our childhood camping trips, recounting the tales and legends our grandparents had shared with us. But as the hours passed, a strange sensation settled over us, a feeling of being watched. We brushed it off as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt eerie and alive with secrets. It was then that we heard it, a soft, distant murmur, like voices carried on the wind. We strained to listen, and the whispers grew louder, forming into distinct words. It was a language we couldn't recognize, ancient and filled with sorrow. Driven by curiosity and unease, we followed the eerie whispers into the woods. The forest seemed to come alive with the echoes of forgotten tales, the very trees whispering stories of times long past. In a clearing, we discovered a cluster of weathered stones, a makeshift shrine adorned with symbols and offerings. It was a relic of an ancient civilization, a testament to the forest's deep history. As we explored further, we uncovered faded, ornate journals buried beneath the underbrush. The journals were filled with handwritten entries, each chronicling the life and experiences of someone who had called the forest home centuries ago. The stories spoke of love, loss, and a profound connection to the land. They told of a tribe that had revered the forest as sacred, a place where spirits roamed and stories were etched into the very earth. My sister and I were captivated by the forgotten tales, but our reverie was shattered by a bone-chilling wail that seemed to emanate from the heart of the forest. The whispering voices grew louder, and we realized we were not alone. We fled the clearing, our hearts pounding, and returned to our campsite. The encounter had shattered the tranquility of our camping trip, leaving us with a chilling reminder that the wilderness held secrets too deep to fathom. As we left the forest, we carried with us the echoes of forgotten tales, a haunting reminder that the ancient past could bleed into the present, revealing stories that had long been buried by time. It was a stark testament to the fact that the wilderness could be a repository of forgotten memories, waiting to be uncovered by those who ventured into its depths. Our latest expedition took us to the heart of a remote forest, a place where the untamed wilderness seemed to beckon. Little did we know that our decision to explore the unknown would lead us to a sinister discovery that would haunt our memories forever. Our campsite was nestled beside a tranquil river, its waters flowing with a gentle murmur. The dense forest enveloped us, its ancient trees creating an oasis of seclusion and serenity. The first day was filled with exploration. Jay and I hiked along the winding trails, marveled at the intricate ecosystems, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter under the starry night sky. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing both warmth and comfort. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over us, a sense of anticipation. The forest, once inviting, now felt cloaked in shadows and secrets. Driven by curiosity, Jay and I decided to embark on a daytime adventure. We ventured deeper into the woods, our footsteps echoing in the quietude of the forest. It was then that we stumbled upon an old, dilapidated cabin, its wooden frame sagging under the weight of time. The cabin appeared abandoned, its windows shattered, and its doors hanging ajar. We exchanged intrigued glances and cautiously approached the structure. Pushing the creaking door open, we entered the dimly lit interior. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, and our flashlights illuminated a chilling scene. Inside the cabin, we discovered several lifeless bodies, their eyes staring vacantly into oblivion. Panic surged through us as we realized the gravity of the situation. We quickly backed away from the cabin, our hearts pounding with fear. We knew we had to contact the authorities, but the remoteness of our location weighed on us. Returning to our campsite, we packed up our gear, our minds haunted by the disturbing sight. We ventured back to civilization and reported the discovery to the authorities. I was a woman who had fallen on hard times, forced to live life without a roof over my head. Homelessness had become my harsh reality, and camping alone was my way of finding solace in a world that had turned its back on me. My chosen campsite was nestled in the outskirts of a city park, where the relentless chaos of urban life gave way to the tranquility of nature. The stars overhead were my only companions, and the promise of a peaceful night beneath them was all I sought. The first day was filled with survival. I gathered what little resources I had: a tattered sleeping bag, a small cooking stove, and a meager supply of food. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I lit a small fire, the flames casting a fragile warmth against the cold night. The night began quietly, the stillness broken only by the distant sounds of the city. I had grown accustomed to the solitude, finding solace in the simplicity of my existence. The wilderness was my refuge, a place where judgment and disdain could not reach me. But as the hours passed, an unfamiliar sensation settled over me, a sense of being watched. I brushed it off as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt eerily silent. Unable to ignore the feeling, I ventured deeper into the woods, my flashlight cutting through the inky darkness. It was then that I stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin hidden away from the world. Curiosity got the better of me, and I entered the cabin cautiously. The air inside was stale, and the furniture was weathered and decaying. But what drew my attention was an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. As I began to read, I discovered the journal belonged to a woman who had lived in the cabin decades ago. Her entries spoke of a life filled with hardship and loss, a life not so different from my own. The woman had found solace in the solitude of the cabin, just as I had found in my homeless existence. Her words were a testament to the power of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there could be moments of redemption. As I closed the journal, I realized that the cabin had been a place of solace for both of us, a sanctuary in a world that had cast us aside. It was a stark reminder that sometimes the wilderness could offer a form of redemption, a chance to find solace in the face of adversity. Camping in the remote wilderness was my way of escaping the chaos of the modern world, a chance to reconnect with the primal rhythms of nature. But one camping trip would become a harrowing ordeal as I faced an unseen predator that lurked in the shadows. My chosen campsite was deep within a dense, ancient forest, far from any sign of civilization. The towering trees loomed overhead, their branches casting eerie silhouettes in the moonlight. The promise of a night of solitude beneath the stars filled the air. The first day was filled with exploration. I hiked along rugged trails, marveled at the untouched beauty of the landscape, and reveled in the simplicity of life without distractions. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I lit a campfire, its crackling flames providing both warmth and comfort. The night began peacefully, the stars shining brilliantly in the clear sky. The forest was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, a symphony of nature's mysteries. I felt at one with the wilderness, a lone observer in a world untouched by time. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over me, a sense of being watched. I dismissed it as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt oppressive. It was then that I heard it, a soft, low growl that seemed to come from the shadows. I grabbed my flashlight, scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. The growl grew louder, closer, and more menacing. Panic gripped me as I realized that I was now alone. An unseen predator lurked in the night, its presence shrouded in darkness. I fumbled for my camping gear, my heart pounding with fear. The predator circled my campsite, its movement stealthy and deliberate. I caught glimpses of glowing eyes in the distance, but the creature remained hidden. I knew I had to defend myself, to protect my camp and my life. With trembling hands, I lit a flare and held it aloft, casting an eerie red glow over the forest. The predator hesitated, its growls growing fainter. It was a tense standoff, both of us locked in a primal battle of survival. Then, in a burst of movement, the creature lunged from the shadows, its form a blur of fur and teeth. I screamed, swinging the flare in desperation. The creature yelped and retreated into the darkness, leaving me shaken but alive. As the night wore on, the predator's presence waned, and the forest returned to its tranquil state. I spent the remaining hours huddled by the dying campfire, my heart still racing. Camping had always been my escape from the noise of the city, a chance to immerse myself in the quiet embrace of nature. Little did I know that a camping trip to a remote forest would lead to an encounter with the mysterious and the unexplainable. My chosen campsite was nestled deep within an ancient forest, where the trees stood like sentinels guarding secrets lost to time. The lush canopy overhead filtered the sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor, creating an ethereal ambience. The first day was filled with exploration. I hiked along winding trails, marveled at the moss-covered boulders, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I lit a campfire, its flickering flames dancing to the rhythm of the night. The night began peacefully, the quiet broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. I felt a profound sense of solitude, a communion with the natural world that surrounded me. But as the hours passed, a strange sensation settled over me, a feeling that the forest was alive with whispers. It was as if the very trees themselves were communicating in a language I couldn't understand. Driven by curiosity, I followed the eerie whispers deeper into the woods. The forest seemed to come alive with movement, shadows shifting and dancing in the moonlight. In a clearing, I discovered a circle of standing stones, their surfaces etched with ancient symbols. The whispers grew louder, forming into distinct words and phrases. I couldn't comprehend the language, but the tone was mournful and filled with a sense of longing. As I stood among the standing stones, a feeling of sorrow enveloped me, as if the very stones themselves were mourning some long-forgotten tragedy. The air was charged with an otherworldly energy, and I felt as though I had stumbled upon a place of great significance. Then, in the midst of the whispers, I heard a name that sent shivers down my spine. It was the name of a lost civilization, a people who had once called this forest home. Suddenly, the forest came alive with movement, and the standing stones seemed to pulse with an otherworldly light. I felt a presence, as if the spirits of the ancient civilization were awakening. Terrified yet entranced, I fled the clearing and returned to my campsite. The encounter had shattered the tranquility of my camping trip, leaving me with a haunting sense of the unknown. As I left the forest behind, I couldn't help but wonder about the mysteries of the standing stones and the whispers of a forgotten civilization. This happened a few years ago now. Camping in a national park had always been an exhilarating escape, a chance for adventure and camaraderie. But one fateful camping trip would turn into a harrowing night as we found ourselves pursued by an unknown menace. Our chosen campsite was nestled deep within the heart of the park, miles away from civilization. Towering trees surrounded us, their branches creating a natural canopy that blocked out the moonlight. The promise of a night of wilderness and bonding filled the air. The first day was filled with laughter and exploration. We hiked along rugged trails, swam in crystal-clear streams, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and dreams beneath the starry sky. The night began peacefully, the campfire casting a warm glow on our faces. The forest was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, and we felt at one with nature. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over us, a sense that we were not alone. We dismissed it as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt eerie and suffocating. It was then that we heard a distant rustling, like the soft footsteps of an unseen pursuer. We grabbed our flashlights, scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. The rustling grew louder, closer, and more menacing. Fear gripped us as we realized that we were being pursued. We could hear heavy breathing and low growls, but the source remained shrouded in darkness. Panic surged through our group as we fumbled for our camping gear, our hearts pounding with terror. The pursuit continued, our footsteps echoing through the forest as we fled into the night. The unknown menace was relentless, its presence a haunting shadow just out of reach. We stumbled through the darkness, our flashlights cutting through the inky blackness. As we finally reached the edge of the park in safety, the pursuit ceased. Whatever had chased us retreated into the forest, its intentions unknown and its identity a chilling mystery. Camping in the heart of the wilderness was a thrilling adventure, a chance to escape the constraints of everyday life. But one camping trip would become a nightmare as we found ourselves lost in the unforgiving expanse of the forest. Our chosen campsite was deep within the wilderness, far from the comforts of civilization. Towering trees enveloped us, their branches creating a natural canopy that blocked out the sun. The promise of a night of solitude and adventure filled the air. The first day was filled with exploration. We hiked along winding trails, marveled at the grandeur of nature, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter under the starry sky. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing warmth and comfort. The forest was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, and we felt like guests in their world. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over us, a sense of disorientation. We dismissed it as fatigue, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt like an impenetrable labyrinth. Fear gripped us as we realized we were lost, our campsite nowhere in sight. Panic surged through our group as we fumbled for our flashlights, our hearts pounding with dread. We wandered through the darkness, our flashlights cutting through the inky blackness. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, and the trees whispered secrets we could not understand. Hours turned into an endless night, and our fear grew with each passing moment. We stumbled through the wilderness, our desperation mounting as we searched for any sign of civilization. Exhausted and disheartened, we finally stumbled upon a clearing that led to a familiar trail. Relief washed over us as we found our way back to safety, our ordeal in the wilderness forever etched in our memories. Camping in the wilderness was a cherished escape, a chance to reconnect with the primal rhythms of nature. But one camping trip would lead to a chilling encounter as we stumbled upon a mystery that defied explanation. Our chosen campsite was nestled beside a pristine lake, its mirrored surface reflecting the towering trees that surrounded it. The lush forest exuded an air of serenity, and the promise of a peaceful night beneath the stars filled the air. The first day was filled with exploration. We hiked along scenic trails, marveled at the intricate ecosystems, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter under the starry night sky. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing warmth and comfort. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over us, a sense of being observed. We dismissed it as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt oppressive. It was then that we noticed something strange, a series of fresh footprints leading away from our campsite and into the woods. They were barefoot prints, their size and shape like nothing we had seen before. Fear gripped us as we followed the footprints deeper into the forest. The trail was winding and erratic, as if the person who had left them had been running in circles. As we ventured further, the footprints abruptly ended, as if the person had simply vanished into thin air. We scanned the area with our flashlights, but there was no sign of anyone. The forest was eerily silent, and the air was heavy with an unexplainable tension. We felt as though we were being watched by unseen eyes. Unable to unravel the mystery, we returned to our campsite, but the encounter had left us with a lingering sense of dread. The forest held secrets too deep to fathom, and the vanishing footprints remained a haunting enigma. As we packed up our gear the next morning, we couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding, a mystery that would forever haunt our memories of that camping trip. Camping in the wild had always been my way of finding solace and escape from the bustle of everyday life. But one camping trip would become a surreal odyssey as we uncovered an ancient sanctuary hidden deep within the heart of the wilderness. Our chosen campsite was nestled in the midst of a dense forest, far from the distractions of the modern world. Towering trees surrounded us, their branches forming a natural canopy that filtered the sunlight. The promise of a night of solitude and exploration filled the air. The first day was filled with adventure. We hiked along rugged trails, discovered hidden waterfalls, and reveled in the untouched beauty of the wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the campfire, sharing stories and dreams beneath the starry night sky. The night began peacefully, the crackling fire providing both warmth and comfort. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, a symphony of life that echoed in the darkness. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over us, a sense that something ancient and mysterious was nearby. We dismissed it as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt like a realm of secrets. Driven by curiosity, we ventured deeper into the woods, our flashlights piercing the inky darkness. It was then that we stumbled upon it, an ancient stone structure, half buried in the earth, its weathered surface covered in moss and ivy. The structure appeared to be a forgotten sanctuary, a relic of an ancient civilization. Massive stone pillars stood in a circle, their positions marked by ancient symbols and carvings. In the center was a stone altar, its surface worn and pitted by the passage of time. As we explored further, we discovered a series of faded paintings on the stones, depicting scenes of rituals and ceremonies. They spoke of a people who had revered the forest as sacred, a place where they communed with the spirits of the natural world. The air around the sanctuary seemed to thrum with an otherworldly energy, and we felt as though we had stumbled upon a place of great significance. It was as if the very stones themselves held memories of the rituals that had taken place there. Deep within the sanctuary, we discovered a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed by fallen leaves and debris. Inside, we found a collection of ancient artifacts, an ornate dagger, a set of intricately carved masks, and a bundle of weathered scrolls. The scrolls were filled with writings in a language we couldn't decipher, but their pages told stories of a people who had once lived in harmony with the forest. They spoke of a spiritual connection to the natural world and the mysteries of the wilderness. As we left the sanctuary behind and returned to our campsite, we couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding, a glimpse into a world that had long been forgotten. Camping in the wilderness had always been my favorite way to escape the chaos of city life, a chance to find peace and solitude. But one camping trip would become a harrowing ordeal as I confronted the sinister presence that lurked among the trees. My chosen campsite was deep within an ancient forest, far from the conveniences of modern life. Towering trees surrounded me, their branches forming a natural fortress against the moonlight. The promise of a night of solitude and reflection filled the air. The first day was filled with exploration. I hiked along rugged trails, admired the majestic landscapes, and reveled in the beauty of the untouched wilderness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I gathered around the campfire, my only companion, the crackling flames. The night began peacefully, the fire casting dancing shadows on the forest floor. But as the hours passed, a strange feeling settled over me, a sense that I was not alone. I dismissed it as imagination, but the unease lingered. The forest, once inviting, now felt like a realm of shadows. It was then that I heard it, a soft, faint whispering that seemed to come from the depths of the woods. The whispering grew louder, forming into distinct words and phrases. I strained to listen, but the language was foreign and unsettling. Fear gnawed at me as I grabbed my flashlight, scanning the darkness for the source of the whispers. The forest seemed to come alive with movement, shadows shifting and dancing in eerie patterns. Driven by a sense of dread, I followed the whispers deeper into the woods, my flashlight cutting through the inky blackness. It was as if an invisible presence was leading me further into the heart of the forest. In a clearing, I stumbled upon a circle of ancient stones, their surfaces etched with cryptic symbols. The whispers grew louder, and I felt as though I had entered a realm of the supernatural. The air was charged with an otherworldly energy, and I shivered as I realized I was now alone. As I stood among the stones, the whispers coalesced into a single, haunting phrase, "Join us." The words sent chills down my spine, and I felt as though unseen eyes were watching me. Terrified, I fled the clearing and returned to my campsite, my heart pounding with fear. The encounter had shattered the tranquility of my camping trip, leaving me with a chilling reminder that even in the serenity of nature, there could be malevolent forces at play. As I left the forest behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had come face to face with something beyond comprehension, a presence that whispered from the depths of the wilderness, beckoning those who dared to listen into the shadowy unknown.